The next day arrived quickly, and Lin arrived at the entrance of the newbie dungeon. It wasn't just students from his high school who came to the newbie dungeon. Almost all students in Western Sea City who had completed their class transfers would come here. All of them know that if they formed a team, the experience would be evenly distributed. Based on the advice of the senior players, soloing was recommended for dungeons below level 10. Principal Lu walked over and said that except for Charlotte and Lin, all main combat classes needed to bring support roles for the dungeon. Someone asked, "Why don't Charlotte and Lin need to bring support?" Principal Lu replied, "Charlotte is preparing to apply to Xiajing Academy, and as for Lin, you can ask him if he needs any support." Several support players shook their heads in disagreement. Most of those who chose support roles were girls. These girls were terrified when they saw Lin's skeletal warriors and had no intention of forming a team with him. Lin informed Principal Lu that he also intended to apply to the Xiajiang Academy, making it clear that he did not want to form a team. Principal Lu was surprised by this revelation because one of the requirements to enter the Xiajiang Academy was a minimum level of 12. Lin only had a week to level up from his current level to 12, which would be quite challenging. Lin didn't say much, only expressing his confidence. Before entering the dungeon, Charlotte challenged Lin, saying they would compete to see who could level up faster. Lin neither agreed nor refused, remaining non-committal. Charlotte huffed and tilted her head back, revealing her slender and graceful neck. "If you don't answer, I'll take it as a yes," she declared. Lin released 4 skeleton warriors and commanded them to find and kill monsters. The 4 skeleton warriors dashed off in different directions. Weaker monsters were quickly slain, and notifications kept appearing as the skeleton warriors continuously found and killed big-eared bunnies. In less than half an hour, Lin reached level 2. He summoned several more black iron-grade skeleton warriors and noticed that their movements formed a map. He looked around and discovered some overlooked monsters. Activating his skill Soul Flame, he instantly killed the level 2 monsters. Soon, Lin reached level 3 and continued summoning more skeleton warriors. Even level 5 monsters were easily dispatched by the skeleton warriors. Lin didn't even need to lift a finger. He simply waited for the experience gains. In no time, he reached level 4. Outside the dungeon, Principal Lu and Charlotte's father were chatting. They mentioned that Su Qianxing and Lin Mohan both reached level 5 in the beginner's dungeon. Charlotte should be close to that level as well. They were all aware that each person automatically exited the dungeon after 12 hours, so it's difficult to get higher level. Xia Dongyang changed the topic and mentioned Lin. He was shocked knowing Lin awakened as a necromancer. He knew dealing with the undead and the deceased inevitably evoked unsettling thoughts in most people's minds. As Lin continued to level up rapidly in the dungeon, 7 hours had passed, but he had yet to encounter an 8th-level monster. However, he noticed that the skeleton warriors could only stray up to 500 meters away from him. Any monsters on the path were instantly slain by the skeleton warriors. After walking for a while, the terrain of the dungeon finally changed. The grassland came to an end, and a forest appeared ahead. Just as he entered the forest, a tree branch lashed out at him with great force. The branch, appearing like a whip, struck Lin, but it didn't cause any harm. His passive skill was in effect, transferring all the damage he received to his summoned creatures. Ahead stood a massive level 8 tree. With a thought, Lin commanded one of the skeleton warriors to attack the whipwood tree. Surprisingly, it wasn't instantly slain. He ordered all the skeleton warrior continue to attack the tree, and after 4 strikes, it fell. Looking at the dense forest with numerous level 8 whipwood trees, Lin commanded the skeleton warriors to spread out and attack the trees in different areas. Their blades kept landing on the whipwood trees, 4 strikes each, swift and decisive. Outside the dungeon, the sky gradually darkened. Suddenly, a brilliant light emanated from the entrance of the dungeon, and everyone looked up simultaneously. Lin emerged from the light. Principal Lu asked how he managed to come out, and Lin replied softly, "I beat the dungeon." Principal Lu couldn't believe his ears and eyes. Lin had reached level 7 in just 10 hours. Lin didn't provide much explanation, but simply applied to go to the outskirts of West Sea City. The shock occupied Principal Lu's mind, rendering him momentarily speechless. Seeing Principal Lu's lack of response, Lin called out to him again and waved his hand in front of his eyes. Principal Lu snapped out of his daze and instructed Lin to take a rest. Principal Lu returned to his desk, and the other principals looked at him curiously. After taking a few sips of tea, Principal Lu revealed that Lin had completed the newbie dungeon. Everyone was astonished and could hardly believe it. Lin continued to replenish his spiritual energy through meditation. By now, he had summoned a total of 24 skeleton warriors, but his summoning space still had 70 vacant slots. After a while, the 12-hour time limit was up, and the students who had entered the dungeon were teleported out one by one. Many of them wore expressions of exhaustion, but even more were filled with excitement. Charlotte emerged from the dungeon as well, having reached level 5. After exiting the dungeon, Charlotte couldn't find Lin at first. She scanned the surroundings with her beautiful eyes and finally spotted him in the distance, deep in meditation. Her eyes widened, and she stood frozen in place, seemingly shocked by the revelation that Lin had reached level 7. As Xia Dongyang waved his hand and got on the car with Charlotte, her eyes couldn't help but glance towards Lin. Xia Dongyang noticed his daughter's gaze and immediately understood what she was thinking. Charlotte snorted, her eyes burning with determination. Xia Dongyang smiled, but also informed Charlotte that Lin had completed the dungeon and come out after 10 hours, having defeated all the level 8 monsters. On the bus, Gao Yang hugged Lin tightly and asked how he managed to reach level 7, pleading to join him in leveling up next time, in which Lin winked and said, sure, maybe later. The next morning, Gao Yang couldn't find Lin at the school gate. He then learned that Lin had gone to the outskirts of Western Sea City. It dawned on Gao Yang that he had been bailed by Lin, which explained why he had agreed so quickly the day before. At the Imperial Exchange District, Lin went through the identity verification process. Lin had access to the exchange, albeit with a low-level permission of only level 1. Lin checked the missions available with basic trading and gathering missions, and found one that involved clearing a level 14 dungeon. The dungeon difficulty was categorized as normal, nightmare, and hell, and this particular mission required nightmare level or higher completion. Lin shook his head. He was still too weak at the moment. The city gate guard held the exit permit provided by Lin and verified his information. Although the guard were puzzled by how a level 7 student was allowed to leave the city, the exit permit was genuine, and the city gate guard quickly approved the verification. The guard advised Lin to stay safe and cautious. As he walked out of the city gate, a cold wind blew against him. The sky immediately darkened, and a heavy atmosphere filled the air. Inside and outside, the city felt like two different worlds. Lin sensed the presence of goblins behind him and summoned his skeletal soldiers to attack the level 10 goblin. Compared to his level 7 skeleton warriors, this goblin was too weak. Lin felt excited as he summoned all of his skeleton warriors and charged towards the large goblin army ahead. He clenched his fists, feeling a surge of anticipation. At this rate, reaching level 15 before the major exam shouldn't be a problem. He then recalled how his sister had already reached level 16 before her own major exam, and he wondered how she had achieved such progress. He couldn't wait to see his sister. After a while, his level increased to 10, and his talents and skills were both upgraded. He could now summon bronze-level skeleton warriors. With his greatly increased spiritual energy, Lin eagerly summoned a bronze-level skeleton warrior. The bronze-level skeleton warrior no longer had the gray color, but instead had a pale greenish-white hue. The weapon in its hand had transformed into an axe. Its base attributes were astonishingly high, reaching 1500. Moreover, it possessed a skill called Rampage Strike, which dealt double damage to the target and had a cooldown of 10 minutes. As Lin was about to continue summoning bronze-level skeleton warriors, the sound of a breaking wind echoed, followed by several arrows flying past him. Multiple arrows flew right in front of him, and one of them struck him. His passive skill automatically redirected all the damage to the skeleton warrior, so Lin himself was unharmed. A figure dressed in black emerged from the forest, running at high speed with impressive agility. She noticed Lin and swiftly changed direction, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Judging by her attire, Lin could roughly determine the professions of her as an assassin. Then two persons appeared. They were an archer and a mage. Unable to catch the girl, they asked Lin where the person had gone. Instead of answering, Lin spoke coldly. "You shot me with an arrow. Apologize." The archer looked at the arrow on the ground, realizing what had happened, and also apologized, although puzzled as to why the arrow didn't cause any harm. The mage's expression grew gloomy, clearly unhappy about the escape. He turned his gaze to the skeleton warriors, his eyes filled with disgust, and slowly raised his staff. However, the archer suddenly pulled the mage back and walked the other way. Upon seeing the retreating figures, remarked that these two individuals couldn't be too high-leveled, probably around level 20 at most. If they were to attack him, Lin felt he might have to resort to killing. The bronze-level skeleton warriors effortlessly slaughtered the monsters in the area, as if he was mowing the lawn. However, Lin's leveling speed began to slow down. It continued until nightfall, with Lin still needing 30% more experience to reach level 11. He had no intention of going back. Time was limited, and he couldn't afford to waste it on traveling. He had to work harder than anyone else to be attended to Xiajing Academy. Lin set up a campfire in the forest and ate his food, deep in thought. He still couldn't figure out how his sister managed to reach level 16. There must be something he overlooked. As Lin pondered and recalled the memory of his sister returning from the western outskirts with injuries all over her body, he started to piece things together. He combined his knowledge from school with the information and from the outskirt. Suddenly he realized something. The Western Sea Mine dungeon. Could it be that his sister teamed up with others to tackle that dungeon? But it was a nightmare-level dungeon. This revelation sparked his curiosity and determination to uncover the truth. He decided that once he reached a higher level and acquired more strength, he would investigate the Western Sea Mine dungeon and find out what had transpired there. Perhaps that was the missing piece to understanding his sister's rapid leveling and the secrets behind her achievements. Lin clenched his fist, feeling confident in his previous guess. The skeleton warriors remained hidden in the darkness of the night, while Lin began to meditate. In the middle of the night, one of the skeleton warriors alerted him, causing Lin to snap out of his meditation. Soon, a person appeared within his line of sight. It was the same black-clad person who had escaped earlier that afternoon. The girl asked if there was any food available, and Lin handed her a sweet potato. The girl didn't show any signs of disdain and eagerly devoured the food, revealing her face by removing her mask. She began to thank him, but suddenly broke into a violent coughing fit. While still coughing, she continued to talk to Lin, who handed her a bottle of water. After she finally managed to speak clearly, she asked for his name. However, when Lin didn't answer, she suggested they both use detection spell on each other. Lin pondered for a moment and nodded, indicating his agreement. Both of them activated the detection spell simultaneously, their fingertips emitting a faint glow as they used the spell on each other. To Lin's surprise, the detection spell failed, and he didn't receive any information about the girl. The girl suddenly giggled, displaying a triumphant expression. Although this was her first time seeing of the necromancer profession, she finally knew Lin's name and level. Her words started flowing rapidly, one after another. Lin looked at her calmly and asked, "Why?" The girl was delighted to finally hear Lin speak and responded, "Why?" Lin looked at her intently and asked the question again. The girl smiled and took out a badge-like item. It was a screening badge. As long as you wear it, anyone whose level is not more than 10 levels above yours will have their detection spells fail when used on you. The girl put away her badge, and Lin nodded before casting a detection spell again. This time, it succeeded. Ning Yi, level 19, Shadow Assassin. A gentle breeze blew, and Ning Yi's smile instantly vanished. Lin also turned to look in a certain direction. In addition to the archer and mage they had encountered earlier, there was now a knight with a giant shield. The three individuals surrounded them from different directions. Just as the girl was about to flee, an arrow shot from the darkness. Ning Yi reacted swiftly, dodging to the side in an instant. The arrow exploded with a bang, splitting into two streaks of light that fell on Lin and Ning Yi respectively. These were no ordinary arrows. They were marker arrows. Red marks appeared above the heads of both Lin and Ning Yi. The sound of a cold laughter filled the air as the mage they had encountered before emerged from the forest. They considered Lin as part of the girl's group. The girl attempted to explain that Lin had nothing to do with her, but the three individuals clearly didn't believe her. The archer on the tree chuckled and decided to kill both of them, so no one would know about their possession of intermediate skill scrolls. Ning Yi whispered, "I'll hold them off. You run on your own." Lin looked at her and asked, "What about you?" The girl didn't want to involve Lin in the danger. As a shadow assassin, Ning Yi might have been able to escape before, but now that she was marked by the archer's arrow, her stealth ability was ineffective, making it difficult for her to escape again. The mage raised his staff, preparing to attack. The staff erupted with a brilliant glow, and a massive ball of light ascended into the sky, illuminating the surroundings as bright as day. Ning Yi's hand shimmered, and a blue dagger appeared in her hand, her entire body tensing up. The archer on the tree had already drawn his bow to full, ready to shoot. The knight stood with his shield, assuming a charging stance. The mage's staff was gleaming brightly. At this moment, Lin raised his finger slightly, and a skeleton warrior appeared in front of him. The mage showed a hint of disdain and strong disgust. He shouted lightly, and a gigantic fireball, about 1 meter in diameter, materialized out of thin air, engulfed in roaring flames, and shot toward the two of them. Ning Yi's expression changed, and she immediately pulled Lin backward. But as they were retreating, Ning Yi suddenly felt a heaviness in her body, and their speed suddenly slowed down. An invisible thread extended from the mage's staff, entangling her feet. The archer also took action. An arrow was shot, but halfway through its trajectory, it split into 3. Meanwhile, the knight launched his charge, rushing towards the two of them at an astonishing speed. The girl suddenly exerted force and pushed Lin away, moving him out of the range of the attack. At that moment, 2 skeleton warriors appeared on either side of Ning Yi. The knight collided with the skeleton warriors, but while the skeleton warriors remained motionless, the knight was sent flying backward. The archer's triple shot landed on the skeleton warriors, creating metallic impact sounds. Amidst the flames, the skeleton warriors slowly emerged, radiating a pale blue glow, showing no signs of injury. The mage, witnessing this scene, couldn't believe it. How could a level 10 necromancer's summoned creature withstand a one-shot from his level 21 fireball? The archer and the knight were also stunned, shocked by the strength of these summoned creatures. With a grating sound, more and more skeleton warriors appeared, surrounding the 3 of them. A total of 44 skeleton warriors formed a tight circle around them, leaving no escape. With everyone stunned, including Ning Yi, she couldn't believe her eyes. Wide-eyed and open-mouthed, she was in disbelief. She had seen Lin's skeleton warriors earlier today, and they appeared worn out and weak. How could they become so powerful? Lin, with a determined look in his eyes, walked back to Ning Yi's side, his gaze filled with a murderous intent. He uttered a single word: "Kill!"